For the past few Sundays, our gospel readings have had stories that Jesus will tell, or parables if you will, in order to make his point. And so this morning is no different. We have Jesus telling a story, except that some have read this story and have taken it to be a literal event, which would be very problematic, but that's a different discussion and a different time. But this morning, Jesus tells the story of two men. One who is blessed with wealth in this life, and the other who is not. There is no suggestion in this story that the one who is blessed with wealth in this life was corrupt or had gotten his wealth in any corrupt manner. Last week, we heard a story about the manager who was corrupt. That's not the case this morning. There's nothing to suggest that this man in any way had done any wrong to accumulate what he had. On the other hand, we have someone who doesn't have, as a matter of fact, he's poor, he's not working, he's unemployed, and he stays at the gate of the rich man, hoping that when the garbage is taken out, he's going to find something to eat. He's not in the gate to be at the rich man's table to eat what falls off the table. That's not what is being suggested here. It is what is taken out that he can hopefully find something to eat. Both of them live their lives and die. The poor man who is called Lazarus, this is not the Lazarus that Jesus raised. Let me be quick to point that out, because they got the same name, but they're not the same. This Lazarus is poor. The other Lazarus was not too poor. He was with his sister Martha and Mary. This Lazarus is the poor man in this gospel text. And in some way, the gospel writer just gave this man a name. I mean, he's one of the few that we have a name for, but never mind that. He's poor. He's at the gate. Eventually, he dies. I mean, he's unkept. I mean, Jesus is very graphic in this story, won't you say? I mean, he wants to really make the point. So that the rich man, when he's entering his gate, he will not miss the opportunity to see Lazarus at his gate. Because the dogs will be around Lazarus, and he's there waiting for an opportunity to find something to eat. Lazarus dies, and he is taken by the angel to Abraham's bosom. The rich man dies, and he's buried. What's the point being made here again? Lazarus is taken to a place of bliss, if you will. Jesus did not say, at least in his text, that Lazarus is taken to heaven. He's taken to a place of bliss with Abraham. The rich man dies and he's buried. But somehow they are able to see one another. Here's another problem for this text, but never mind that. That's another discussion for Bible study. The rich man sees Lazarus with Abraham, and he pleads for him to get him some water to drink. I mean, even in death, he still is hoping to have his servants take care of him. But never mind that. And Abraham has to point out to him that, look, there's a chasm between us. No one can come from you to us, and no one can come from us to you. All right, Father Abraham, if that is the case, please do me this favor. Send Lazarus back to earth so he can warn my brothers so they don't come to where I'm at. Apparently this is where he's at. You know, have you driven past some of those churches that have smoking or non-smoking? They put on a sign. This is an aside, but you know, sometimes I'm amused by, you drive by churches like us, I put a message over there to get your attention. Some churches have that, smoking or non-smoking, which section of the restaurant you go to. We used to go to the restaurant, smoking or non-smoking. What those churches have, smoking or non-smoking, is heaven or hell. That's what they say. In heaven is non-smoking. So all the smokers are not going to go to heaven because there will be no cigarette in heaven. If you smoke, you go to hell. I mean, that's what the sign is saying. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. The rich man is in this place and he he's tormented, and he is saying to Abraham, please send Lazarus back to warn my other 5 brothers so they don't come to where I'm at. This place is miserable. What is Jesus trying to suggest in this text? Is he saying that if you have wealth in this life, you're going to hell? I pray God not. Do we all have to be poor like Lazarus in order to go to heaven? God forbid. We got problems with our hands. No, that's not what Jesus is suggesting at all. In some way, Lazarus, in his poverty, in his misery, nurtures a relationship with God that allows him to spend time with Abraham. We haven't gotten to heaven or hell yet. The rich man, in some way, is self-secure. Why does he need God? And in his sense of security of himself, nurtures no relationship with God, and in the end is separated from God when he goes to the world of the dead. I suggest to you this morning that what Jesus is trying to point out to us is, look around you and see the less fortunate. I submit to you that Jesus is saying you have been blessed with a lot. Bless others. Because all that you have in this life will do you no good when you take your last breath. That's the message I submit to you that Jesus is saying to us, because Amos suggests that too, and also the Apostle Paul. We are to use the blessings that we have received from God to bless others. We have to let our lives bless others so that they can know the love of God through us. We are to let our light so shine that others will see the good we do and give glory to our Father in heaven. This is not about the have and the have-not. You have people that have not, I care less about God to begin with, so I'm not saying that if you don't have, you have a better relationship with God. You have people that have and have a relationship with God, I submit to you. But it's how we use the blessing that God has given us. The rich man had paid no attention to Lazarus. But in some way it seems he didn't know Lazarus was there, because now in death he sees Lazarus and he wants Lazarus to reach out to him. Did you in your lifetime reach out to Lazarus? Every time you came in and went, every time you went out, did you see Lazarus at your gate? If you saw him and you pay him no mind, you did not allow your blessings of life to bless him. But now you want him to do you a favor of giving you some water to quench your thirst. How do we live our lives in this life to bless others? How do we use that which God has given us so that others are blessed by us? Because at the end, my brothers and sisters, we were given an accounting. Remember last week? The manager was called to give an accounting of the property that he had been managing. I suggested to you last week that you and I have been entrusted by God with that which belongs to God, life. Life is not ours. God has given us life so that we can live in such a way that others will want to know the Christ we say we serve. But this text also raised the question about what happens when we die, which is a whole other Bible study, but let me suggest to you this morning that when we die, this is one of those things we do from a pastoral standpoint. We say to people, oh, he's gone to a better place and all of that. All of that is pastoral. When you die, you go to the world of the dead. I don't know what our world looks like. I will tell you when I get there, if you can wait long enough. But I'm not going there right now. I don't know what the world of the dead looks like, but I know when people die, they go to the world of the dead. Because if we die, and some of us die and go straight to heaven, and others die, you never see anybody, you never hear anyone in any gathering where people say he died, he's gone to hell. We always are sending people to heaven. I mean, I just love people. You get in a whether it is at a funeral home, wherever the context would be, at church, we are always sending people to heaven. Boy, there will be some surprises when we don't meet them there when we get there. And this is not what Jesus is all about today. This is not what he's focused on. People die and go to heaven, die and go to hell. That's not what Jesus is focused about. Jesus is trying to get across to you and me, use your life to bless the world. Because all that you accumulate in this life will be left behind in some way for others. We are reminded by text, naked did we come into this world, naked will we return. Yet, there are some of us who live this life as though this is it. When death comes, life is done. No, we are people of hope. And if we are people of hope, then we should live in this life in such a way that others will have hope in the one who has given us the assurance that I go to prepare a place for you so that where I am, there you will be also. The rich man looks and he sees Lazarus with Abraham. I'm challenged to think that he looked up and saw Lazarus instead of looking across the street. And so, I hope they didn't live across the street from one another. But Abraham suggests that there is a chasm between them. But this chasm is such that they can talk to one another across this line. And aside here, there are those who in this life would not want that chasm to be in such a way that we can talk to one another across the street. Some people want some of us to go to hell and never to be heard from again. But they can keep saying their prayers. As I conclude, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with my professor in college. It was one of those things, we are people. They've been worried about what happened to the dead from the time of Jesus, in fact, before Jesus. And so we continue to be concerned about it today. But we had a class, and it was one of those theological debates. I guess we just had lunch, and so we didn't have anything else to do. But we were discussing what happens. At what point you have passed the point of forgiveness. And my suggestion was, after you take your last breath, you have passed the point of being forgiven, you now stand to be judged. And my professor said, no. Mercy and compassion extends beyond the grave. And my immediate reaction was, then for God's sake, who's going to go to hell? We need to send some people to hell. And then I had to remind myself, I didn't die on the cross for anyone, That's up to God to deal with. But I just felt that there has to be a way for some people to go to hell because some people live in this world to make hell for some of us on earth. I don't know about you, but that was Wilbur. But the debate was for us to struggle, and we continue to do that today. Have you heard people say, okay, these people are not Christian, are they going to go to heaven or hell? That's not my business. Leave it to God. Let's focus on whether we're going to make it to heaven to begin with. At what point have we passed God's mercy and compassion? At what point are we outside of that? I don't know, but I try to suggest that death is the dividing line. And I could be wrong. And I look forward to the surprises after we cross over into the world of the dead and await judgment. But whatever the case may be, let me conclude by reminding you that you and I have been empowered by God to bless the world. Only in a way that we can do. The choice is ours. To allow God to use us as the conduit of his mercy and compassion, or not to. But God will not force us. This is my conviction. God will not force us to do that which we don't want to do. So if you choose that you are not going to allow yourself to be an instrument of God's mercy and compassion, God will not force you. But should you choose to be, then look out, because you will be amazed by what God is capable of doing through you. May we choose to allow God to use us so that we are the conduits of his love, his mercy, and compassion. That we will walk around in the community as lights, and others will be drawn to the Christ that is reflected in and through us. Amen.